What do you see? When you look in the mirror, look at yourself honestly, unposed, unpoised, maybe unclothed. However life finds you, has shaped or graced or weathered you, your face, your body. When you stand quietly, looking through the glass, looking within, inside yourself. When you gaze long and openly enough for the roles to reverse and you to become the mirror image, your mirror image to become the observer, the beholder, the I. When your mirror, hiding nothing, saying everything, tells you the truth. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 121 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the sun and moon reflecting waters of the Rhode Island coast. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In broadcast 120, we celebrated and appreciated summertime, the bounties, memories, feelings, and graceful idlings of this easeful season. This week, we're looking in the mirror. Mirrors and mirroring of all kinds, from what we see in them, through them, to what they show us up close, reveal, face to face, to the enchantments of nature's mirrored surfaces, places of literal, visual reflection, among others, and where we chance now and then to see ourself, often in surprising or interesting ways. And through all time and the world as places of inner reflection, contemplation, for poets to mystics, philosophers to meditators, and people of all walks. So let's go through the looking glass together and wander, wonder, discover through the cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry I've gathered for us, for you. The solitude of the shower. In this white-tiled temple, all is pure, all is quiet, save for the sound of clear water falling and cleansing. The light that pours through the window and drawn white curtain is luminous, like the wet skin of these arms and legs, of these open hands and feet, of this glistening face reflected in the mirror on the shelf where fragrant bars of olive and citrus soap rest. In this warm bubble, where I can be wholly alone with myself, where it's always safe, always welcoming, always full of solitude. A poem from Holland, from the Dutch countryside. Back in 1998, Dit zachte Land, this gentle land. Cloth-white cows float by, reflected in the moss-cool water that streams through this soft land, where centuries pass on summer afternoons. Poem for friends of mine, especially one these days, and has been an amazing friend, John Casey, his wife who passed away early in the year. This is for Judy and John Casey from Forestburg, New York, your water-lilied lake. It's about the lovely lake they had at the foot of their property in the country. Down the moss-enchanted path to your water-lilied lake, edged now with autumn and old evergreens, down to the silver and black lacquered water beading past the end of day sun, down to the last late reflections of soft sky and solitary self. Poem from 1990, All Hallows Eve. Every day, a new face appears in the mirror. Your costumes change, but your dreams remain under your skin. Well, I was curious, as you might be, about the invention of the mirror. So this is from thoughtco.com. Who invented the first mirror? Humans and our ancestors probably used pools of still water as mirrors for hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. Later, mirrors of polished metal or obsidian, volcanic glass, gave wealthy preeners a more portable view of themselves. Obsidian mirrors from 6200 BCE were discovered at Kahlo, the ancient city near modern-day Konya, Turkey. People in Iran used polished copper mirrors at least as early as 4000 BCE. But what about the glass mirror we know today? It also came about surprisingly early. Who was it that made a sheet of glass packed with metal into a perfect reflecting surface? To make a mirror, a pre-Christian Lebanese or Phoenicians blew a thin sphere of molten glass into a bubble and then poured hot lead into the bulb of glass. The lead coated the inside of the glass. When it cooled, it was broken and cut into convex pieces of mirror. These early experiments in the art were not flat, so they must have been a bit like funhouse mirrors. Users' noses, for example, probably looked enormous. Nonetheless, the images would have been much clearer than those obtained by looking into a sheet of polished copper or bronze. Mirrors were commonly thought to reveal an alternate world in which everything was backward. Many cultures also believed that mirrors could be portals into supernatural realms. So there's some tidbits, and here's another one. This is from worldatlas.com. Where can you see the world's largest mirror? The reflection of the sky in Salar de Uyuni, the world's largest mirror in the Andes, not only the longest mountain range of the Andes in the world, but also home to the flattest surface on Earth, a huge salt flat known for a bizarre light show, especially at night. The Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, 4,086 square miles, at almost 12,000 feet, 5 feet below 12,000 feet above the sea level, and known as the world's largest mirror because of the layer of water that forms on the surface, especially after the rain. Well, I'd certainly like, now that I know about it, I'd certainly like to experience that in person sometime. How about you? Wikipedia gave me some other cultural material. House of Mirrors, or Hall of Mirrors. I was thinking of Versailles. I remember being there as a teenager in a school field trip, a French class, and that was fascinating, that Hall of Mirrors. And, of course, funhouse mirrors, yes. And those... They were maze-like puzzles, right, in the halls and the houses of mirrors, and you may have experienced them in amusement parks, as I did as a kid. They also showed up in films. Woody Allen's movie Manhattan Murder Mystery, Charlie Chaplin's 1928 movie The Circus, where Charlie is chased into a mirror maze by a thief and the police. One of the most famous ending sequences in film history related to a house of mirrors is in Enter the Dragon, starring Bruce Lee. The finale takes place in a house of mirrors where he learns it's best to smash the glass obstacles to solve his problem and defeat the villain. They talk about Bond movies, Walt Disney's movie Something Wicked, This Way Comes, and my favorite, I would say, is a film noir from 1947, The Lady from Shanghai. Wonderful film, regardless of the mirror scene, but the mirror scene is the capstone of the whole thing. It's with Orson Welles, and definitely worth a look. I think it holds up through time, continues to fascinate. And then Of course we have Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland author, yes, and Through the Looking Glass. Well, that was written as a sequel to Alice's adventures in Wonderland, and it describes her further adventures as she moves through a mirror into another unreal world of illogical behavior. Says the Britannica, and then the Wikipedia had a bit more, that she finds that, just like a reflection, everything is reversed, including logic. For example, running helps one remain stationary. Walking away from something brings one toward it. Chessmen are alive, nursery rhyme characters exist, and so on. And you'll find, as you may know or not know, such verses as Jabberwocky and the Walrus and the Carpenter and Tweedledum and Tweedledee. So a lot of other things can happen in the mirror with your imagination, as they did for Lewis Carroll. Well, you know that I am often musing on questions to ask you, and I'm going to ask you about mirrors and mirroring. When you think of a mirror, maybe right now, what associations spring to your mind? How often do you look in the mirror, and how closely? How present are you, or absent, when you're in front of the mirror? And if you do look closely, privately, intimately, what do you see? What do you feel? What's revealed? What does the mirror tell you? Or has it recently, interestingly, told you? Do you ever see your past or future self reflected there? Do memories sometimes arise of other mirror images or memorable mirror moments you recall? And if so, what are they? Maybe of you, maybe of someone else before a mirror, or you and another together before one. Curious. Was there a mirror in your childhood, in your own or a relative's house or elsewhere, that fascinated you for some known or unknown reason? Or a story you read back in time about a mirror that captured your fancy or your imagination? And what experiences do you remember being surprised or enchanted by in your reflection appearing in other places, such as passing a glass window or on the surface of the water, or in something else that reflected your face or whole body back in an interesting, unusual, or beautiful way? Do you love looking at or meditating on waterscapes or pools of water that reflect the earth, like the sky and clouds on the surface of a still pond or lake, like summer trees floating below your feet in puddles of rain, like the moon bobbing on the ocean as you swim or stand on the shore? Questions for you. From Lenox Hill, East 68th Street, New York City, November 2016. This can happen. You can ask, I asked a few moments ago, as I did, to take yourself to that place. This is not an out-of-body experience. An other-body experience before a moonlit mirror where the usual I disappears and another me in an opposite yet mysteriously present body appears, fully formed, statuesquely, almost anciently faced, who gazes so silently, transcendingly from another place, a knowing place, into, through, and beyond my visible self and the ether we're sharing in these suddenly, fleetingly, middle of the night communing moments. Transcendence is always possible, of all kinds. Well, let's dip back a moment into nature's mirrorings. Conversation Between a Mirror and the Sea by Elder James Olson. The sea. For all my depth, my surface is a mirror. The mirror, I am a surface. I reflect a depth. Thank you, Elder Olson. It's a poem of mine from the Yucatan Peninsula, 2001. The moon's a mirror. He told us tonight, the professor, that moon you see is a mirror reflecting the sun's light somewhere else on the earth, bouncing it from there back down millions of miles of black space runwayed with stars. It engraves in mercury on the moon the incandescent outline of a bowl, making an effulgent arc along the bottom curve of the otherwise shadowy gray ball you see now suspended in the sky. On another lunar note, this poem from the road to Morristown, New Jersey, driving, having a nocturnal mobile reverie, I guess we could call it, as often happens when I'm in motion, and not always in motion, but when I am, it happens too. Driving to the moon on a deep indigo end of November night, as it hangs so low and clear over the near bare treetops, over the dark road perforated with white, seeming to drive closer, though knowing there's no closer to get, to the half-seen lower or half-suggested upper reaches of the black and blue-white lunar wonder, however fast the speed of my motor or sight. Except the fancy of pulling my chariot up to park by a lake-like crater, where I lean and look back at the sapphire and emerald-swirled earth through the lens of my clear rear-view mirror. A poem by Ravi Shankar, Double Rainbow. Speeding without destination after dark torrents have poured and been returned at home, the skies above mirror my mood. Windshield wipers knifing through sheets, back roads slick with pooling, when a shard of cloudlessness opens. Pulling over, cutting the ignition, I unstitch myself from the humid seat, still fuming, to greet a full spectrum of color arcing past the treetops in lockstep with its fainter inverse. Archer's bow, hem of the sun god's coat, bridge between worlds, reconciliation and pardon. They don't last. Thank you, Ravi Shankar. It's from his collection Deepening Groove, 2011. It's a poem from the looking out from the Villa Il Buon Riposo, of good rest, Il Buon Riposo, in the Tuscan hills of Impruneta, October 1998. Tramonto del Sole, sunset. A tractor fliggers and ziggurats across a terraced line like a far-off firefly. A stream of milk smoke pours up behind a screen of junipers. Shadows fill the spaces in a forest of spreading pines. Furled cypresses gather round an ochre villa. The grapevines on a close-shaved hillside are combed into neat yellow-green rows between bands of russet earth. Blue-bottomed clouds mirror the contours of soft-shouldered mountains and the calls of small birds piccolo through the arriving quiet. Tramonto del Sole. Well, I was thinking, as I thought of landscapes and the mirroring things that happen there, I was thinking of the Claude glass. Maybe you don't know about that, the Claude glass. Claude. So Wikipedia tells us this. The Claude glass, or black mirror, is a small mirror, slightly convex in shape, with its surface tinted a dark color. Bound up like a pocketbook or in a carrying case, Claude glasses were used by artists, travelers, and connoisseurs of landscape and landscape painting. They had the effect of reducing, and have, if you're holding one, and simplifying the color and tonal range of scenes and scenery to give them a painterly quality. The user would turn their back on the scene to observe the framed view through the tinted mirror in a sort of pre-photographic lens, which added the picturesque aesthetic of a subtle gradation of tones. The Claude glass is named for Claude Lorrain, a 17th century landscape painter whose name in the late 18th century became synonymous with the picturesque aesthetic. Although there's no indication he used it or knew of it, they named it after him. Well, I've kept an eye out for one of these for decades. I have yet to find one, but I would like to find one and carry it around and hold it and see what I see in that mirror, in that interesting mirror. There's also the camera obscura, which has been used. This is from Camera Obscura History.com. Has been used for over 1,000 years. Its origin predates even the invention of optics. The first one was simply a small hole in one wall of a darkened room or tent. Light passing through the hole formed an inverted, upside-down mirror image of the outside scene on a white screen placed across the room from the hole. The image was dim and fuzzy, but it did accurately show the scenery in full color, along with the motion of birds, ocean waves, and tree branches swaying in the wind. Artists were undoubtedly the first, quote, users of it, and as they soon realized that one could trace on the screen the outlines of buildings, trees, shadows, and animals, this rough sketch could later be filled in with color to achieve the artist's objectives while maintaining correct perspective and sizes for near and distant objects. Well, how about that? If you didn't know about that. Pablo Picasso said once, "Who sees the human face correctly? The photographer, the mirror, or the painter?" Which brought me to nose around for some commentary on artists making self-portraits, mirror-esque images of themselves, but interpretively so, often far or more deeply seeing than surface seeing, although some did it that way. And some, certainly photographers, just photograph themselves pretty straight on in mirrors, but we're not talking about that. So this piece is from Obelisk Art History and arthistoryproject.com. It's called the Canvas Mirror, this article. The self-portrait as we know it today focuses on the artist themselves, often with eyes fixed on the viewer. It's a bold art form, requiring the artist to examine themselves as a subject and to situate their own body in the canon. The self-portrait can be a practice of therapy, self-discovery, or personal myth-making. While artists represent themselves for many reasons, here are a few themes to look out for. Artists may use self-portraiture to locate themselves in their geography and culture, as in Self-Portrait on the Borderline Between Mexico and the United States by Frida Kahlo. Self-definition as an artist is a common theme, with artists showing themselves at their easels, brushes in hand. Self-portraiture can be a powerful tool to redefine and refute gender norms, as in Claude Cahun's What Do You Want From Me? And Romaine Brooks' Self-Portrait from 1923. And an alarming number of artists depict themselves dead, including James Ensor in The Skeleton Painter. Well, I am very intrigued with other self-portraits, and I have made more than a few of them in my time. Definitely not selfies, those kind of vain creations, often vain, not always, but more to see into different parts of where I was, less so physically than emotionally or spiritually, but especially emotionally in my life. So I've done them over time in places and points, and I look back and I can see into that. I can, like looking at a kind of an old map. Where was I then in myself? Very telling. And the more distance, the more telling I get. You might do such a thing. Experiment with that. Van Gogh once wrote to his brother Theo, "People say, and I'm quite willing to believe it, that it's difficult to know oneself, but it's not easy to paint oneself either." We may think that Van Gogh must have been vain since he painted himself so often, but it wouldn't be true. He was chronically poor and simply didn't have enough money to pay for models. He had to paint himself instead. There's one more clue that could give us more light into his self-portraits. One of his artistic idols was Rembrandt van Rijn, who created around 100 self-portraits. And Van Gogh admired him a lot, and he called Rembrandt the, quote, magician of magicians. So when you have time, look at both Van Gogh's self-portraits and Rembrandt's. I was in Amsterdam many times, but one particular time in the Van Gogh Museum, and looking at a row of them. They had many, but I looked at a particular row, and they were absolutely incredible. They were so revealing, entirely different each one to the other. Edward Hirsch. I wanted to share a few self-portrait poems. Edward Hirsch has this one, self-portrait. I lived between my heart and my head, like a married couple who can't get along. I live between my left arm, which is swift and sinister, and my right, which is righteous. I live between a laugh and a scowl, and voted against myself, a two-party system. My left leg dawdled or danced along. My right cleaved to the straight and narrow. My left shoulder was like a stripper on vacation. My right stood upright as a Roman soldier. Let's just say that my left side was the organ donor and leave my private parts alone. But as for my eyes, which are two shades of brown, well, Dionysus, meet Apollo. Look at Eve raising her left eyebrow while Adam puts his right foot down. No one expected it to survive, but divorce seemed out of the question. I suppose my left hand and my right hand will be clasped over my chest in the coffin, and I'll be reconciled at last. I'll be whole again. Thank you, Edward Hirsch. Lots to contemplate with that. Mirror image 43. This is one of mine, made in Mexico on my 43rd year. This is an entirely sensual, visceral one, I suppose I could say. And if you made a self-portrait, not in a photograph or a painting or sculpture, but in words, what would it read? What would it mirror of you? Mirror image 43. Sun-bleached brows, water lily eyes, salt-spiced lips, thighs the color of café con leche, sand-soft hands and soles. Like then I close my eyes and I go back to that image and that feeling place. And others. Linda Pastan, self-portrait. I am child to no one, mother to a few, wife for the long haul. On fall days I am happy with my dying brethren, the leaves, but in spring my head aches from the flowery scents. My husband fills a room with Mozart, which I turn off, embracing the silence as if it were an empty page waiting for me alone to fill it. He digs in the black earth with his bare hands. I scrub it from the creases of his skin, longing for the kind of perfection that happens in books. My house is my only heaven. A red dog sleeps at my feet, dreaming of the manic wings of flushed birds. As the road shortens ahead of me, I look over my shoulder to where it curves back to childhood, its white line bisecting the real and the imagined, the way the ridgepole of the spine divides the two parts of the body, leaving the soft belly in the center vulnerable to anything. As for my country, it blunders along, as well-intentioned as Eve choosing cider and windfalls, oblivious to the famine soon to come. I stir pots, bury my face in books, or hold a telephone to my ear, as if its cord were the umbilicus of the world, whose voices still whisper to me even after they've left their bodies. Thank you, Linda Pastan. Derek Walcott's poem was a must for our mix, for our looking glass time. You may remember it from another reading here or there that I did of it in one or other broadcasts. Derek Walcott, Love After Love. The time will come when with elation you will greet yourself, arriving at your own door in your own mirror. and each will smile at the other's welcome, saying, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. Thank you, Derek Walcott. Always a pleasure to read that and feel that and digest that. Love after love. I come back to the points we may recognize, all kinds of changes, transitions, metamorphoses sometimes in our mirrors, like the ones that showed themselves, that revealed themselves to me one day on an island in the Aegean some years back. The world begins again. No longer needed vestiges of my earlier life, my last life, dematerialize in the face of my face in the mirror that hangs on the wall of a new world, of my next life, that reflects a man reviving, restoring, rematerializing. Here's David White's beautiful poem, All the True Vows. See how this resonates with you. All the true vows. All the true vows are secret vows. The ones we speak out loud are the ones we break. There is only one life you can call your own, and 1,000 others you can call by any name you want. Hold to the truth you make every day with your own body. Don't turn your face away. Hold to your own truth at the center of the image you were born with. Those who do not understand their destiny will never understand the friends they have made, nor the work they have chosen, nor the one life that waits beyond all the others. By the lake, in the wood, in the shadows, you can whisper that truth to the quiet reflection you see in the water. Whatever you hear from the water, remember, it wants you to carry the sound of its truth on your lips. Remember, in this place, no one can hear you, and out of the silence, you can make a promise it will kill you to break. That way, you'll find what is real and what is not. I know what I am saying. Time almost forsook me, and I looked again. Seeing my reflection, I broke a promise and spoke for the first time after all these years in my own voice, before it was too late to turn my face again. Thank you, David White. Thank you so much. And you, dear listeners, and you, all your true vows. Burning in the Rain by Richard Blanco. Someday compassion would demand I set myself free of my desire to recreate my father, indulge in my mother's losses, strangle lovers with words, forcing them to confess for me and take the blame. Today was that day. I tossed them, sheet by sheet, on the patio and gathered them into a pyre. I wanted to let them go in a blaze, tiny white dwarfs imploding beside the azaleas and ficus bushes. Let them crackle, burst like winged seeds. Let them smolder into gossamer embers, 1,000 gray butterflies in the wind. Today was that day, but it rained, kept raining. Instead of fire, water, drops knocking on doors, wetting windows into mirrors reflecting me in the oaks. The garden walls and stones swelling into ghostlier shades of themselves, the wind chimes giggling in the storm, a coffee cup left overflowing with rain. Instead of burning, my pages turned into water lilies floating over puddles, then tiny white cliffs as the sun set, finally drying all night under the moon into papier-mâché souvenirs. Today the rain would not let their lives burn. Interesting one. Thank you, Richard Blanco. Burning in the Rain. That's from Looking for the Gulf Motel. The eye of the beholder is powerful, isn't it? And in a twist, good twist, the Twilight Zone episode is something I thought about from 1960. Used to love watching those as a boy. Maybe you know it. And that was the title, Eye of the Beholder. A young woman lying in a hospital bed, her head wrapped in bandages, awaits the outcome of a surgical procedure performed by the state in a last-ditch attempt to make her look, quote, normal. Well, I've never forgotten since the anticipation of her bandages, these just completely, you can't even see her head or face or anything, coming off, and you don't see her face until you see her looking at her face in the mirror they hold to her after the bandages are off, and she lets out a curdling scream, and she's desperate to look like everyone else. And some of her earliest memories are people looking away, horrified by her appearances. So, the doctor says, if the treatment doesn't work, she'll have to go to a colony of similar-looking people. Well, they take the bandages off. You don't see anybody else's face. They hold the mirror up to her, and she looks absolutely what we would call quite beautiful, like perfect complexion, structure, everything. And she screams. And then the camera turns at all the doctors, and they're all these like pig creatures. They have pig heads in white coats and nurses' outfits. And so that's why she's screaming, because she doesn't look normal like they look. Yeah, it's quite an episode. I bet you could dial it up on YouTube. Anyway, The Eye of the Beholder, Twilight Zone. Wild. In The Eye of the Beholder, well, on the other side of the spectrum, there's the beautifulness, the true beautifulness of many kinds we can behold and bathe in, be nourished by. This is a poem from Cobble Hill, Brooklyn of mine, spring, April 2017. Sunbathing. Not the kind you do on a spread of gold sand and blue ocean. No. The sun of a lover's beholding eyes you bathe in, of a mother's cherishing eyes you bask in, of your own eyes warming you as you gaze in the mirror of your greatly radiant heart. Sunbathing. By heart and root. By heart and root is how, however unseen by others or in our own mirrors, we move, want to move, can move through the world, through the days, the dances of life, love, work, wondering, with our hearts wildly open, reaching up into the light, with our roots wildly free, reaching down into our earths, to all the places where we're deeply touched and nourished, where we can grow into our fullness, soothe our sorrows, heal our woundedness, where we can flow with such great aliveness. Couple of others I may want to skip just to keep us in good time. One by Ted Kuser, one by Cavafy. I think we'll pass on Ted Kuser's. We'll read Cavafy's The Mirror in the Hall. This goes back quite a number of years, I think to the 40s, 30s. The rich house had in the hall an enormous mirror, very old, bought at least 80 years ago. A very handsome boy, assistant at a tailor's, on Sundays an amateur athlete, was standing there with a parcel. He handed it to someone of the house, and he took it inside to fetch the receipt. The tailor's assistant was left alone and waited. He went up to the mirror and began to look at himself and put his tie straight. After 5 minutes, they brought him the receipt. He took it and went away. But the old mirror, which had seen and seen in the many years it had been in existence, thousands of things and faces, the old mirror was glad now, and was proud to have received upon itself that entire beauty for a few minutes. Brushing Teeth with My Sister After the Wake by Jim Daniels. At my kitchen sink, the bathroom upstairs clogged with family from out of town spending the night after the wake and the after wake. Cold beverages have been consumed and comfort food, leftovers bulging both the fridge and the mini-fridge. In our 50s, both half asleep, half awake, we face each other. My sister's smile foams white down her chin at the end of a day on which no one has smiled. We laugh. We may never brush our teeth together again. No mirror down here to see our haggard faces. We rinse, we spit, as we were taught. Thank you, Jim Daniels. Rainer Maria Rilke's poem, I Am Too Alone in the World. I am too alone in the world, and not alone enough to make every minute holy. I'm too tiny in this world, and not tiny enough just to lie before you like a thing shrewd and secretive. I want my own will, and I want simply to be with my will as it goes toward action, and in the silent, sometimes hardly moving times when something is coming near, I want to be with those who know secret things, or else alone. I want to be a mirror for your whole body, and I never want to be blind or to be too old to hold up your heavy and swaying picture. I want to unfold. I don't want to stay folded anywhere, because where I am folded, there I am a lie. And I want my grasp of things true before you. I want to describe myself like a painting that I looked at closely for a long time, like a saying that I finally understood, like the picture I use every day, like the face of my mother, like a ship that took me safely through the wildest storm of all. My artist friend in Princeton, regular listener Joy Creeves, said she'd love to have me share a Stanley Kunitz poem. I did once or twice quite back in time, but here's one of his that fits our theme. Benediction. God, banish from your house the fly, the roach, the mouse that riots in the walls until the plaster falls. Admonish from your door the hypocrite and liar. No shy, soft, tigerish fear permit upon your stare, nor agents of your doubt, God drive them whistling out. Let nothing touched with evil, let nothing that can shrivel heart's tenderest frond intrude upon your still, deep blood. Against the drip of night, God keep all windows tight, protect your mirrors from surprise, delirium. Admit no trailing wind into your shuttered mind, to plume the lake of sleep with dreams. If you must weep, God give you tears, but leave you secrecy to grieve, and islands for your pride, and love to nest in your side. Thank you, Stanley Kunitz. As we come now to the last sharings here in these turbulent times of ours, we're still going through, so many of us around the world, especially the highly polarized way many people are relating, or should I say not relating to each other, I invite times of truce and to look at the peace and harmony of pure nature as a guide, as an inspiration. This poem here next is the anthem poem I created for the Truce Foundation of the United States, where I served and still serve as Poet Laureate since 2017. The Times of Truce. When the blowing winds cease, when the swelling seas settle down, when the earth enters a still point near dawn, near dusk, or the night skies grow silent with stars, whenever the world of nature makes peace with itself, and man mirrors that peace in himself, gives free leave to his fellow man. These are the times when rare and graceful plumes of truce, deep spirits of unity, community, can be found and greatly felt by everything living, be remembered and honored by everyone, young to old, hearkening. The times of truce. Yeah, you can find that on my site, thepoetorialist.com, and on my YouTube channel. And you can see and hear a visualized and originally musically scored version of it in both places, if you like. Rudolf Steiner, back in the 1920s, said, "A healthy social life is found only when in the mirror of each soul the whole community finds its reflection, and when in the whole community the virtue of each one is living." Thank you, Rudolf Steiner. Wise words. I feel we could do well to contemplate this individually and collectively. Also encourage us, each and all, dear listeners, to go see, feel below the surface, yes, of self, but also of the natural world, into its many layers and treasures. Under the surface from Kitchell Pond, Wonderland Brook Reservation, September 2016. Under the surface. As the afternoon brook water falls beneath the weathered wood bridge at the edge of this Walden Pond, you can lean your forearms on the sun-warm railing and see the world floating under the surface. Cotton swabs of clouds with brushstrokes of marine blue, an eddy of swallows in a swirl of shadow forms recalling some ancient rune. A large dragonfly hovering, doubly thrumming its coppery wings. A blue heron lifting off, stretching off, first large, then smaller and smaller until disappearing altogether. A verdant semicircle of still summer trees growing magically upside down, all without roots, toward a mirrorless place where unseen things may be found or imagined sleeping or stirring. And let's celebrate, shall we? Whatever body, whatever earth suit, as I like to call it, we have and we appear in our mirrors. Well, here's how I did on my 60th birthday. I gave you a self-portrait on my 43rd, but this was the 60th. This was Sag Harbor, New York, April 5th, 2018. The 60-year-old birthday suit. Perfectly, beautifully draping, perfectly form-fitting. This 60-year-old birthday suit, as I stand inside it, in the early spring sun warming in through the windows, as I study it in the one-way, two-way mirror that reflects back its 5 full decades through all skies and seasons, under many stars and many moons, inside different rooms, stories, romances. This suit I'd love to wear, to sport, my best suit, Sunday best, everyday best. It's only gotten better with age, and wonderfully unlike other suits, will never go out of fashion or suffer being buttoned up or hemmed in, just the opposite. This fine and festive native suit, I feel, believe, will serve me well for more than a few more decades. So a toast to all of our earth suits, whatever they are. Mark Strand, Old Man Leaves Party. It was clear when I left the party that though I was over 80, I still had a beautiful body. The moon shone down as it will on moments of deep introspection. The wind held its breath. And look, somebody left a mirror leaning against a tree. Making sure that I was alone, I took off my shirt. The flowers of bare grass nodded their moon-washed heads. I took off my pants, and the magpies circled the redwoods. Down in the valley, the creaking river was flowing once more. How strange that I should stand in the wilds alone with my body. I know what you are thinking. I was like you once. But now, with so much before me, so many emerald trees and weed-whitened fields, mountains and lakes, how could I not be only myself, this dream of flesh, from moment to moment? Thank you, Mark Strand. It's from his collection, Blizzard of One, small but wonderful. Wonderful collection. Okay, we're down to the last three things, I think, for you. Feeling into our clarity of perception, I would say, begins with the willingness and courage to see the world inside and around and beyond you as it really is. Not how we necessarily feel it is or ought to be or pretend it to be. Such clarity creates amazing things, from choices to deep connections, good choices. This is called seeing clearly. Without blinders or blindfolds, illusion or confusion, looking consciously, wide openly, without looking away, seeing straight to the bottom of the waters, of yourself, of others, of everything before you, all things below, above, and around your mind, your heart, your present moment, your future. And in that clear blue sky seeing, you find that your choosing, your living, your loving becomes so natural, moving wisely through your days, engaging the world confidently, becomes usual. And the beauty, the pure joy of being your own person, a one and only man or woman, in the mirror and in the eyes of those you know, comes often and easily, so affirmingly, when you're open, able, committed, no matter what or where it leads, to see everything clearly. And next to last, one more Rilke poem, one more of his, an invitation into our places of gleaming, of radiance. He wrote this in Paris in 1909 from his uncollected poems. Forget, and let us live now only this, how the stars pierce through cleared nocturnal sky, how the moon's whole disk surmounts the gardens. We've sensed so long already how the darkness breeds many mirrors, how a gleam takes shape, a white shadow in the radiance of night. But now let us cross over and invest this world where everything is lunar. Thank you, Rilke, once again. And last for now, a whole universe. So vast, marvelous, mysterious. The one we live in, the one we read about, talk, write, and muse about. But why bypass the one as profound, as boundless, that lives not out there, but in here, inside each of us? We miraculous mirrors, microcosms, embodiers of that universe, its wisdom, energy, and wonder, awaiting our discovery, unveiling, expressing, in our own way, space and time, the whole universe of you. Thank you again for leaning in, listening and feeling and reflecting in, and for coming to this and my other weekly broadcasts with open ears, open minds, hearts, spirits, sharing them as you do with your circles and sending good words back to me and welcome contributions at times. If you have a suggestion, a compliment, or a question, send me a note. My email is colin@thepoetorialist.com. To donate, you can contribute with ease by Venmo to Fivefold, FIVEFOLD, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal, or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, in the Donate tab, or by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891. Once in a while, patrons can also host me as a working poet in residence on a given property for a given time in a given season to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Email me if you're interested and we can explore the possibilities. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, all the replays on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, engage the mirror, the looking glass, with curiosity as an opportunity for self-exploration and discovery, especially below the surface. Enjoy the gift of pausing and seeing parts of the natural world beautifully reflected in all kinds of moments and places near and far as you go through your days. Make quiet time by any calm waters to simply gaze at your reflection or reflect on your life or your deeper sense of self, body, spirit, and the beauty and mystery of being, of the flow of living you belong to. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.